So we're going to talk about Damon Lindelof. Remember, he had a Star Wars movie and then he didn't have a Star Wars movie, just like so many other people with Lucasfilm. Well, now he's opening up, talking to a podcast about Star Wars, and he is being very critical of Lucasfilm and how they're handling it.
I mean, it wasn't handled well. And he said that this was the one that was it Charmaine, whatever her name is.
Choi,
whatever. That she was, I think her name's in the article later. That was the one that she was going to direct, was this one. So it's like, where is the Rey movie at this point? Because
there's not going to be a Rey movie.
That's what I'm thinking. I think people don't care. And it's funny to me because he's talking about, where they were trying to go with, what was the old stuff and it's competing against where it's moving forward and, and things like that. And I think that's where Star Wars is in general. And he's going to talk about, like, basically it's lost right now. And he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. So we'll talk about that. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, you get woohoo if you do.
Woohoo.
This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And if you'd like more of us, go out to moreclownfishtv.com or more.clownfishtv.com. But moreclownfishtv.com now works. It'll take you out to more Clownfish TV, more episodes you will not find here on YouTube. So thank you so much for the support. So it does seem like Disney is trying to walk back the sequel trilogy a little bit with Star Wars. They don't really know what to do with it. Kathleen Kennedy definitely had them wandering around the desert for the last decade, and not Tatooine, but probably fake Tatooine on blue
They get
screen.
rid of her, and then they get rid of her, and then all of a sudden they bring back the characters people wanted and retcon Disneyland's Galaxy's Edge, which is interesting. But yeah, Screen Rant was clear back, and I know even before Screen Rant was saying it, other people were saying it, that they were hearing that Disney was going to either step over it or start retconning sequel trilogy things. They've been saying it for years, and I know they were saying it December of last year even, and they were getting caught all over the place for saying so. But it does seem like that's exactly what they're doing over there at Lucasfilm, because they can't move forward with more of this stuff. No one wants it.
And you can see it because Star Wars has been in massive decline. We've talked about Mandalorian and Grogu. I don't think is going to burn up the box office, at least not to Star Wars levels. And there is no excitement around this franchise at all. And there were so many announced Lucasfilm projects, and his was one of many. They're like, oh, we're going to do this movie with, Patty Jenkins, and then that didn't happen.
Well, at this point, it became a running joke. It's like whenever they announce something, we're all like, no, they're not. Because it'll just sit there in limbo forever, and that's exactly what happened 9 times out of 10. Or if they did move forward, they'd fire people they had working on it for creative differences and hire somebody else. Yeah,
Lord and Miller were supposed to do Solo, and it wound up being, Ron Howard finished it. And Solo was okay, but I'm like watching Project Hail Mary, and I'm like, well, how much better would Solo have been had they been allowed to do what they wanted to do?
I don't know. And then I'm thinking of too, like, even when things got done, like Obi-Wan. The Obi-Wan show was supposed to be something completely different, and then the writer got canned for the new writer to bring in little Leia. So I'm like, there's a lot of Kathleen Kennedy mistakes and BS, if you ask me. But, here we are. And he was one of the casualties of Kennedy as well.
Yeah. And it's just it was poor management. She needed to go 8 years ago, and they kept her on. All right, this comes from Gizmodo. Damon Lindelof equates his Star Wars firing to the franchise's biggest issues. The Lost, Watchmen, and Lanterns writer correlates his exit to a key issue in a galaxy far, far away. He said that, let's see here, 3 years after announcing 3 different films at Star Wars Celebration 2023, none of them have seen any significant public movement. Odder yet, the 2 movies that have progressed are completely unrelated. So what's the deal? Someone who is there on the inside has an idea, and it may be why he's no longer on the inside.
So if you go back down here, keep going down. It says they asked me, why do you think a Star Wars movie, what do you think a Star Wars movie should be? This is what Lucasfilm asked him. And I said, here's what it should be. And they said, great, you're hired. And then 2 years later, I was fired. And so I was wrong, at least through that prism. He said, what we were attempting to do, my partner, Justin Britt Gibson and Raina McClendon, and I, was to have this conversation in a movie, which is to say there is a force of nostalgia and there is a force of revision. Right there, you're going to have problems. And that they are at odds with one another. That's true. Let's do the Protestant Reformation inside Star Wars. And it didn't work.
That's interesting. Because he says the conversation the fandom is having without winking and looking at the audience, it didn't feel really that risky. Actually, that is what's going on right now. Is you do have people within Lucasfilm, specifically the story group, who have a very different idea
of what there anymore.
They just kind of quietly phased them out, I think. But look at the High Republic. Like, I think that was the High Republic. I think that was their attempt to rewrite Star Wars canon and go back in time before the Phantom Menace and be like, you know what, we're going to rewrite the rules of the Force and all this other shit.
Yeah, we're going to go back to the place we didn't cover that much yet. Well, they did, but not in the new stuff. And we're going to just redo everything and then retcon it from that angle. And it's like, no.
Yeah, and they did it with the Acolyte, and they basically rewrote the rules of the Force and the Force witches and the whole thing. And people hated it.
And it failed.
Yeah.
And that's this is what he's saying. It's like basically what fans are already talking about. Like you need to go in on nostalgia. You don't need to revise the history. You need to make better movies.
Yeah. And that's it. They don't have. Now, he said the issue, according to Lindelof, is there was no clear vision of the movie's purpose.
Of course there wasn't.
The only purpose of Disney Star Wars movies is to make money.
And it's not even doing that.
The only purpose.
There was no clear vision of the sequel trilogy. It was very obvious. There was no overarching story. If you expected that, but The Last Jedi, they undid everything. It was clear. Like no one was steering this boat. It was headed for the iceberg, and there was no captain at the wheel. It was ridiculous. So it's like, of course, there's no purpose to any of this other than make money, and it's not even doing that.
They said, where is it? He said it was hard because they had no idea where this thing fit in Star Wars. He said, where is it inside the canon? What's the relationship with Episode 9? Is it starting a new trilogy? All those things are so massive. They're so big. It's sort of the tanker equation, which is you turn the wheel and it takes 5 minutes before it turns a little bit like this. Yeah, it's a Titanic, basically. Mm-hmm. And Episode 9, the thing about Episode 9 that kills me, you want to talk about Lucasfilm tripping over themselves and canceling something that should not have been canceled. It was Colin Trevorrow's Episode 9, because he took the pieces of The Last Jedi, and from everything I've seen, he actually gave a fairly satisfying ending to that trilogy that made sense. Mm-hmm. It lined up with what had come before. And they got so far along in that they were already building props and puppets and stuff for it. And then they decided to just go.
They Kennedy it and be like, let's just bring Palpatine back. Creative differences. And it's just ridiculous. And then it was completely disjointed. And you found a way to make everybody mad by Rise of Skywalker. At least you should stick with one thing, because their goal was always to make money. It wasn't about telling a story. It wasn't about new characters. It wasn't about any of that stuff. It was about how can we make our characters and make our money.
And that's what the problem is, just in general, with everything that Disney acquires, is they don't understand what made it work. What made all these things work. Star Wars, Marvel, Henson, Muppets, Pixar, was that you had storytellers that wanted to tell the story, usually for a personal reason, and the financial success just happened to come with it. Star Wars was a personal story for George Lucas, and you just want to turn it into a money-making machine.
Well, this is where he brings up. He said, you don't know what the center of Star Wars is. Basically, it was at one point in time Han, Luke, Leia, the Skywalkers, that kind of stuff, which is what it should have stayed. Yeah. But then he goes, then when we start with Episode 7, you have Rey, Finn, and Poe, and they all destroyed that. They didn't even really put them together. They said, you're migrating back in Han, Luke, Leia, and Han, Chewie, which they completely messed up. You had one job. That this new trilogy was over, we're going to be launching these new characters that were going to become the new center of Star Wars, okay? But now is it Mando and Grogu as the center of Star Wars? Is it, Finn, Rey, and Poe as the center of Star Wars? No. It's still Luke, Leia, and Han, because that's what everybody wants.
Yeah. Yeah, is it Mando and Grogu? I think The Mandalorian, was an oopsie-doopsie. I don't think they thought it was going to be as big as it was. But The Mandalorian's basically what the Boba Fett show should have been.
And the movie, yeah.
And because they were going to do a Boba Fett movie. And I feel like The Mandalorian is what the Boba Fett movie would have been. But then they already did it with this Temu Boba Fett. So then they had to turn Boba Fett into Boba Fett, and it was sad.
Yeah,
anyway.
But he said we're not going to answer if Mando and Grogu are the center of Star Wars universe until next week, and fans vote with their wallets. So they know that people are going to reject this. Fans vote with their wallets, and they said they discussed it more on the podcast, which we're not going to go to. But they're like talking about what is the center of Star Wars now. Well, going by what Disney's doing and bringing back original trilogy, I think that the center of Star Wars is still the original trilogy.
Yeah, because that is Star Wars. That is a story that George Lucas wanted to tell. And again, you can't really, I mean, we had the expanded universe and stuff, and they were nice kind of side stories. But as far as like canon goes, it is definitely G canon. It's whatever George Lucas himself made. And it doesn't matter if Dave Filoni palled around with George Lucas. He's still not George Lucas, right?
But you know what? I'm going to argue that, they should have gone with the EU for doing the movies. Because I understand people read the books and you want to do something new. I get that. That being said, the books actually took the characters that you know and love and took them off into other directions, into other worlds, and kept them the center of Star Wars. And that's just the issue. What is the center of Star Wars? They want to make all these different side stories and make it about that. But at the end of the day, no matter what you do, no matter how many stories you do and characters you present, the center of Star Wars, the heart of Star Wars, is always Han, Luke, and Leia.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, it's always going to be, that's what started it. And you can spin off on these side quests and stuff. People are like, oh, those are fun side quests. But that's the center. And I think Disney's just now starting to figure this out.
Well, it's the same with, part of the reason the prequels weren't more popular, I think, initially was because people were like, there's no Han, Luke, Leia, and we've got baby Darth Vader. Like, we want to see characters we recognize, and we're not quite there yet. And that, I think,
even
really
when you brought them back, they ruined them. I mean, like, literally, they couldn't even put them together. If you had done a movie where you put them together, even if you wanted to take it into a new direction with a new cast, okay, pass the torch. It can be done. It can totally be done. They did it with Ghostbusters and everything else. You just had to get the original cast back, pass the torch on to the next group, let them go off happily into the sunset. They're all happy and whatever. We didn't damage the characters in any way, shape, or form. They're still true to themselves. And you do that, and then these guys go off and take over, maybe some help from them occasionally. Because they're going to be like the kids they're coming out and taking over and going to be, the new adventurers. You could have done that, and it would have worked. But you didn't. You literally had one flipping job. I don't understand how you could F it up this bad. I cannot wrap my head around it. It just does not compute. I mean, how?
Disney, it's that simple.
It was handed to you on a silver platter.
Yeah.
They still effed it up. I can't comprehend. If you told me this, like 15 years ago, that Star Wars was going to be completely ruined by 2020, probably you could say 2020, but even by now, I would have been like, you're full of crap.
Yeah, nothing can kill Star Wars. Star Wars is
Star Wars.
The Star Wars is Star Wars. And it's hard because, for our generation in particular, Star Wars was the biggest thing out there. Like, Star Wars is like, you had all the other pop culture, and then Star Wars was at the top of the pyramid. It wasn't even close, right, to anything else, any other kind of fandom. And now it's just another science fiction thing, and it's not even that great.
Well, anything Star Wars came out, you were like, yes, oh my God, yes, finally. And now you're just like, oh, something else they're going to run? Oh, screw this. That's how it is. And I never would have thought I would have felt that way. But here I am.
Yeah.
But Ewoks, yeah.
But Ewoks, there you go. Yeah, they're going back. But that you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't fix, I don't even know if there is any fixing Star Wars short of just letting it rest or whatever. But I'm going to argue, again, Lucasfilm would have been better off not making any new Star Wars than retroactively damaging the original trilogy and the prequels by doing all the shit they've been doing.
Agreed.
Like, just had to just print money. You could have made Darth Vader mugs from now until the end of time, and people would have bought them.
Probably. But you found a way to ruin it. I don't know. Something that you didn't think was able to be destroyed, they destroyed.
Yep. So we're going to wrap it up.
Yes.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.